Women like you shouldn't be here. You need to get back into that kitchen where you belong. Those were the venomous words that Marcus Chen, the dojo's undefeated champion, spat at Maya Thompson, the black woman, as she stood in the center of the dojo. The entire class erupted in cruel laughter when another student, Jake Morrison, chimed in. "What's next? We gonna let housewives earn black belts too?" Maya's eyes burned with a quiet fury that none of them understood. They saw a 29-year-old black woman who had wandered into their sacred space, but they had no idea who they were really dealing with. As the laughter echoed off the wooden walls and the mockery cut through her soul, something ancient and powerful stirred within Maya's chest. The laughter in that dojo was about to turn into shocked silence, and everything was about to change forever. Before we start this story, if you stand against discrimination, hit the subscribe button and type yes, and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. That fateful day, Maya Thompson had finally worked up the courage to walk into Dragon's Path Dojo on what should have been the most exciting day of her life. She had dreamed of learning karate for over 2 decades. But the moment she stepped through those doors, Sensei Williams looked her up and down with pure skepticism written across his face. "We don't usually train people like you here," he said, letting those words hang in the air like poison. Before Maya could even respond, the receptionist Amanda chimed in with fake sweetness. "Honey, there's a nice yoga studio for ladies downtown." Maya's heart was pounding, but she stood her ground. "I want to learn karate. I can pay for classes up front." She was determined to show them she was serious, that this wasn't some whim or hobby for her. Sensei Williams crossed his arms and delivered the crushing blow. "Look, miss, this is a traditional dojo. We train serious martial artists here, not soccer moms looking for exercise." That's when things got even worse. Marcus Chen walked in from his sparring session, sweat dripping from his forehead, and the moment he saw Maya, his face twisted into a smirk. "What's this? We are doing community outreach now, Sensei." The disrespect in his voice was unmistakable. Jake Morrison, one of the advanced students, couldn't resist joining in on the humiliation. "Maybe she's lost. Zumba classes across town, princess." The other students started gathering around, snickering like a pack of hyenas who had found fresh prey. But Maya refused to back down. With dignity that they didn't deserve, she said, "I just want to train. I've studied this art my whole life." Marcus burst out laughing. "Studied? You mean watched movies? This ain't no Karate Kid fantasy, sweetheart." The mockery in his voice was like a knife twisting in Maya's chest. That's when Sensei Williams delivered the final blow. "We're a traditional school. We maintain certain standards." The way he said standards made it crystal clear what he really meant. As they escorted Maya to the door, the jokes got crueler and more personal. Marcus called after her, "Don't come back unless you're bringing us lunch." Jake couldn't resist adding, "Yeah, we'll take some orange chicken." The entire dojo erupted in the kind of laughter that strips away your dignity piece by piece. Maya sat in her car outside that dojo, tears of frustration and rage streaming down her face. But here's what none of them knew. Those words echoed something she had heard before. Her father's voice from 21 years ago. "Girls don't fight. That's not ladylike." The same dismissal, the same crushing of her dreams. But as Maya sat there in that parking lot, something powerful awakened inside her. "I've been training for this my whole life," she whispered to herself. "They don't know what I'm capable of." And they were about to find out just how wrong they were. What happened next would change everything, but none of them saw it coming, because Maya's real training was about to begin in complete secrecy. The very next morning at 5 a.m., while the world was still asleep, Maya was transforming her backyard into something extraordinary. She drove to the hardware store and bought everything she needed: lumber, mirrors, heavy chains for a punching bag. She installed a makiwara post, that traditional karate striking board, right next to her fence. She mounted a full-length mirror on the wooden panels so she could perfect her form from every angle. This wasn't just a workout space. This was her personal dojo, her sanctuary, where she would unleash 21 years of suppressed potential. Every single morning before work and every evening after dinner, Maya was out there training with an intensity that would have shocked those arrogant students. Rain or shine, hot or cold, she was perfecting kata forms that she had practiced mentally for decades. The Heian forms, the Teki kata, the advanced Basai Dai, movements that had lived in her imagination, were finally being brought to life by her body. The heavy bag work was brutal. Her knuckles bled, her shins ached, but she kept going. Her neighbor's teenager Tommy would come over to hold focus mitts, and even he was amazed by her technique and power. But here's what made Maya different from any ordinary student. She had been studying karate in her mind for 21 years. Every kick, every block, every combination had been rehearsed thousands of times in her imagination. She knew the theory behind every technique, the biomechanics of every movement, the philosophy behind every form. Now her body was finally learning what her mind had already mastered completely. The muscle memory was awakening, like a sleeping giant that had been dormant for decades. Maya wasn't just training blindly like some fitness enthusiast. She was studying her enemy with the precision of a military strategist planning a crucial battle. Every single day, she parked across the street from Dragon's Path Dojo and watched through those windows. She learned Marcus's training schedule down to the minute. He arrived at 6 p.m. every Tuesday and Thursday, stayed until 8:30 p.m. She noted his aggressive style, his tendency to telegraph his moves with shoulder movements, his habit of dropping his left hand after throwing a right kick. Something crucial became clear after weeks of observation. Marcus relied too heavily on flashy spinning kicks and had absolutely weak ground defense. He was all show and very little substance. He loved to impress the crowd with high kicks and dramatic techniques, but his fundamentals were sloppy. His footwork was predictable, his defense was full of holes, and his ego was his biggest weakness. She even overheard conversations through the open windows about an upcoming regional tournament where Marcus was the heavy favorite to win. The students talked about him like he was invincible, like he was some kind of karate god who could never be defeated. "Marcus is gonna destroy everyone at regionals," she heard Jake say one evening. "Nobody in this state can touch him." But Maya saw the cracks in his armor that everyone else was blind to. Week after week, Maya's secret training intensified. She studied footage of legendary karate masters on her phone during lunch breaks. She practiced breathing techniques, meditation, and mental visualization. She was becoming something that none of them could have imagined. A complete martial artist who understood not just the physical aspects, but the mental and spiritual dimensions of combat. After 1 month of this intense, secret preparation, Maya had undergone a physical transformation that surprised even herself. Her kata forms were flowing like water after years of mental rehearsal. Her speed and precision were reaching levels she never knew she possessed. Her kicks were snapping with the sound of a whip crack. Her punches were generating power that came from her entire body, not just her arms. She was mixing traditional Shotokan techniques with street-smart adaptations, creating something uniquely powerful and completely unpredictable. Her neighbor Tommy started bringing his friends to watch her train. "Dude, you gotta see this lady," he would tell them. "She moves like she's been doing this forever." But Maya barely noticed the attention. She was in her own world, preparing for something that felt like destiny. And then came the night that would change everything forever. On a busy Friday evening, when the dojo was packed with students and the energy was running high from their regular sparring sessions, Maya walked back into Dragon's Path Dojo. She had chosen this night deliberately. Maximum audience, maximum humiliation for them. When she proved her point, the conversation stopped mid-sentence. Every head turned. The same hostile reception greeted her. The same mocking laughter began to fill the air. Marcus looked up from his training, sweat glistening on his forehead, his confidence at an all-time high from demolishing his sparring partners all evening. He sneered with pure contempt. "Back for more humiliation? I told you, kitchen's that way. What, you didn't learn your lesson the first time?" But this time Maya's response was completely different. There was something in her posture, something in her eyes, something in the way she carried herself that hadn't been there before. The shy, uncertain woman who had been kicked out a month ago was gone. With a calm that unnerved everyone in the room, she said, "I'm here to earn my place, and I'm not leaving until I do." The temperature in that dojo seemed to drop 10 degrees. Students stopped their conversations. Even the advanced belts paused their training. The tension became so thick you could cut it with a knife. Sensei Williams stepped forward. His black belt and decades of experience meaning nothing in this electric moment. I thought we made ourselves clear. You don't fit our dojo culture. Maya's eyes never wavered as she replied with steel in her voice. I am fit to be here more than you think. I've been studying karate longer than most of these students have been alive. Marcus burst out laughing, but there was something forced about it now, something desperate. Studying? Girl, YouTube videos ain't the same as real training. You think watching movies makes you a martial artist? Jake couldn't resist adding his usual poison. She probably thinks Cobra Kai is a documentary. Next she'll be telling us she learned from Mr. Miyagi. The class erupted in laughter, but it was nervous laughter now. Something in Maya's posture, something in the way she stood perfectly balanced, something in her calm breathing, was radiating a quiet confidence that made the smartest students in that room take an unconscious step back. Marcus sensed it too, and his arrogance kicked into overdrive as a defense mechanism. He stepped into a fighting stance, bouncing on his feet, trying to intimidate her. You want to train so bad? You want to be part of this dojo? Show us what you got, princess. The entire class gathered in a perfect circle, sensing that they were about to witness something unforgettable. The energy was electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. Cell phones came out. Students started recording. Maya looked directly into Marcus's eyes with a steadiness that made him genuinely uncomfortable and asked, "You sure you want to do this in front of everyone? Are you sure you want this on camera?" Marcus's arrogance was at its absolute peak, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in his voice that only Maya caught. "Sweetheart, I'll go light on you. Just enough to teach you some respect and send you back where you belong." Even Sensei Williams was protesting now, realizing this had gone too far. "Marcus, this is highly inappropriate. She could get seriously hurt. This isn't what our dojo stands for." But Marcus was already playing to the crowd, feeding off their energy like a vampire. "Relax, Sensei. I'll just embarrass her a little. Give her a gentle lesson she won't forget. Maybe then she'll understand this isn't a game." Then Marcus turned to the class with the kind of supreme confidence that comes right before the most devastating falls in history. "Y'all want to see what real karate looks like versus whatever this pretender thinks she knows? This is going to be educational for everyone." The students started making bets with sick enthusiasm. "She won't last 30 seconds. I give her 20. She'll probably cry before he even hits her. $10 as she runs out crying." The mockery was reaching a fever pitch, but Maya stood there like an immovable rock in a hurricane. Maya bowed respectfully with perfect traditional form, her hands steady despite the hurricane of emotions raging inside her chest. She had waited 21 years for this moment, and every second of that wait, every moment of secret training, every hour of mental preparation had led to this exact instant. Marcus was showboating now, bouncing on his feet, throwing practice kicks in the air, playing to the crowd like this was some kind of performance. This is gonna be like taking candy from a baby. I hope someone's recording this for YouTube. He had absolutely no idea that he was about to face someone who had been preparing for this fight her entire life. The candy was about to fight back, and it was going to be absolutely, completely, devastatingly brutal. The circle tightened, the cameras rolled, and Maya's 21 years of suppressed power was about to explode. What happened next will be burned into the memory of everyone in that dojo for the rest of their lives, and it would change the course of martial arts history in their small corner of Austin forever. If you're hooked with this story, don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more stories like this. The fight began with Marcus dancing around the mat like he was putting on a performance for the Olympic judges, throwing flashy spinning kicks that were more about impressing the crowd than actually fighting. He was bouncing on his feet with the arrogance of someone who had never tasted defeat, showing off his flexibility with high kicks that whistled through the air like deadly weapons. The students were eating it up, cheering and laughing as their supposed champion displayed what they believed was his overwhelming superiority. "Look at those kicks. one student shouted. "She's about to get destroyed." The energy in the room was electric with anticipation of Maya's humiliation. Cell phones were recording from every angle, capturing what they thought would be the most entertaining beatdown in the dojo's history. But Maya stood in perfect traditional stance, her feet positioned exactly as the ancient masters had taught for centuries. She wasn't moving unnecessarily, wasn't wasting a single ounce of energy on theatrical displays. Instead, she was studying Marcus like a scientist observing a dangerous specimen under a microscope, watching his patterns, noting his tells, memorizing his rhythm, calculating the exact moment when his arrogance would transform into his ultimate downfall. "Come on, throw something. Don't just stand there like a statue," Marcus taunted, his voice echoing through the dojo as he grew frustrated that Maya wasn't giving him the easy, panicked target he had expected. He threw a series of testing kicks, a roundhouse to her ribs, a front kick toward her stomach, a side kick aimed at her thigh, expecting to overwhelm her immediately and end this embarrassing spectacle. But something impossible happened that made every person in that room question everything they thought they knew about fighting. Maya deflected every single kick with perfect timing, her blocks so precise and effortless they looked like choreographed dance moves. Her movements were economical, traditional, and absolutely flawless. Each deflection was exactly what it needed to be. No more, no less. It was like watching a master calligrapher write with perfect brush strokes. The confident laughter from the students began to die down like air slowly leaking from a balloon as they realized something was very, very wrong with their assumptions. The betting stopped, the jokes ceased. Even Jake, who never missed an opportunity to mock someone, was standing there with his mouth hanging open. Marcus's expression changed from amused confidence to genuine confusion as reality began to sink in. This wasn't the helpless victim he had expected to toy with for a few minutes before sending home in tears. Maya's defensive skills were not just legitimate, they were absolutely masterful, displaying a level of technique that he had only seen in championship tournaments. His testing phase was over, and now his ego demanded that he escalate to the more aggressive techniques that had made him the undisputed king of this dojo. He started throwing real combinations now, the power punches and lightning-fast kicks that had earned him 47 consecutive amateur victories. These weren't playful jabs anymore, these were the techniques of a serious fighter trying to end a bout. But Maya's counterattacks were coming back like precision lightning strikes, each one perfectly timed, devastatingly powerful, and completely unexpected. Every time Marcus thought he had found an opening, every time he believed he was about to land a decisive blow, Maya was already 3 moves ahead, responding with combinations that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Her footwork was poetry in motion. She moved like water, flowing around Marcus's attacks, always in perfect position, never off balance, never rushed. When she struck back, it was with the kind of technical precision that martial arts masters spend decades trying to achieve. Jake whispered to another student in complete disbelief, his voice cracking with shock. "Where the hell did she learn to move like that? She's making Marcus look like he just started training yesterday. This is impossible." The entire dynamic in that dojo had shifted like tectonic plates rearranging themselves. The circle of students was no longer laughing and joking and placing bets on how quickly Maya would be defeated. They were watching in stunned, absolute silence as their supposedly undefeated champion was being systematically outclassed by a woman they had mocked, dismissed, and tried to humiliate just minutes earlier. Marcus was getting frustrated now, sweat pouring down his face, his breathing becoming labored as the reality of his situation crashed down on him like a tsunami. His perfect record, his reputation as the dojo's golden boy, his entire identity as the untouchable champion, everything was hanging in the balance, crumbling before his eyes. In a moment of pure desperation and wounded pride, he decided to end this nightmare with his signature move, the flashy jumping spin kick that had knocked out opponents in tournaments across 3 states. It was his trump card, his guaranteed finisher, the technique that had made him legendary in local martial arts circles and had never, ever failed him. He launched himself into the air with explosive power, spinning with the technique and athleticism that had made crowds gasp and opponents fear him for years. It was the kind of spectacular, devastating technique that had always brought crowds to their feet and left opponents unconscious on the mat. In his mind, this was going to be the moment when he reclaimed his dominance and sent this pretender back where she belonged. But Maya had been watching Marcus for weeks through that dojo window. She had studied this exact technique in slow motion, analyzed its timing, identified its weaknesses. She knew this move was coming before Marcus even thought of throwing it. She could read his body language like an open book, see the setup in his shoulder positioning, recognize the tell in his footwork. She timed her response with the precision of a Swiss watch, stepping inside his guard at the exact split second when he was most vulnerable, airborne, fully committed to the technique, with absolutely no way to defend himself or change direction. What happened next was so devastatingly fast that even the high-speed cameras barely caught the full sequence. Maya delivered a lightning-fast combination that was pure martial arts poetry in motion, 21 years of suppressed training exploding in a moment of perfect execution. First, a palm strike to Marcus's solar plexus that was delivered with such precision and power that it drove every molecule of air from his lungs and stopped his heart for a terrifying split second. The sound of the impact was like a thunderclap in the silent dojo. Then, before Marcus could even begin to register the first devastating blow, before his brain could process what was happening to his body, Maya delivered a devastating uppercut that connected with surgical precision to his chin. The combination was so perfect, so technically flawless, that martial arts masters would have wept to witness it. It was the kind of sequence that gets taught in dojos for generations, the kind of moment that becomes legend. Marcus dropped like a stone thrown from a skyscraper, completely unconscious before his body even began its journey to the mat. His eyes rolled back. His limbs went limp, and he crumpled in a heap that would have been comical if it weren't so utterly shocking. The sound of his body hitting the floor, a heavy final thud, was the only noise in a dojo that had fallen into absolute, deafening silence. The silence stretched for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. 30 people stood frozen like statues, their minds struggling to process what they had just witnessed. The only sound that remained in that sacred space was Maya's controlled breathing, calm, steady, and completely composed, as if she had just finished a light warm-up instead of ending a fight with one of the most spectacular knockouts in the dojo's history. The silence was broken by the sound of phones hitting the floor as stunned students lost their grip on their devices. Someone whispered, "Oh my God," so quietly it was barely audible. Another student was shaking his head in disbelief, muttering, "That's impossible," over and over again. Sensei Williams, a man who had seen thousands of fights in his 40-year martial arts career, rushed to Marcus's side with the urgency of someone who had just witnessed something that challenged everything he thought he knew about fighting. He was checking Marcus's pulse, his breathing, his pupils, calling frantically for someone to bring an ice pack and clear some space around the fallen champion. "Is he okay?" someone asked from the crowd. "He's not moving," another voice added with genuine concern. The festive atmosphere of anticipated entertainment had transformed into something much more serious and sobering. When Marcus finally regained consciousness, several long, tense minutes later, Maya was the one kneeling beside him, helping him to a sitting position with the same gentle care a nurse would show a patient. There was no gloating, no victory dance, no rubbing salt in his wounds. Just quiet dignity and genuine concern for a fellow martial artist. Marcus's eyes were unfocused, his words slurred as he looked up at the woman who had just shattered his world and everything he thought he knew about fighting. How long have you been training? Where did you learn to fight like that? I've never seen anything like those techniques." Maya's response was quiet, dignified, and absolutely devastating in its simple honesty. 21 years. Every single day for 21 years. He just never bothered to ask. The weight of those words hit everyone in that dojo like a physical blow. 21 years. While they had been playing games and making jokes about her appearance, Maya had been dedicating more than 2 decades of her life to perfecting an art that most of them had only been studying for a few years at most. The transformation in that dojo was immediate and complete, like someone had flipped a switch that changed the fundamental nature of reality in that space. Sensei Williams, a man who had spent decades believing in his own wisdom and superiority, who had dismissed Maya based on nothing more than prejudice and ignorance, slowly rose to his feet and bowed deeply to Maya with the kind of genuine respect that can only come after witnessing true mastery. "I apologize for my ignorance and my prejudice," he said, his voice heavy with shame and newfound respect. "I have dishonored this dojo and everything it should stand for. Would you honor us by joining our school as an instructor? We clearly have much to learn from you." Marcus, still groggy but completely humbled by the experience of being outclassed so thoroughly, looked up at Maya with new eyes that saw her clearly for the first time. Could you teach me those techniques? I thought I was a good fighter, but I've never seen anything like what you just did. I want to learn. I need to learn." The students who had been making crude jokes and placing bets on how quickly Maya would be defeated were now showing the kind of respect that only comes after witnessing something that challenges your fundamental understanding of the world. The phones that had been recording to capture Maya's expected humiliation were now documenting her triumph. Her moment of vindication that would be shared and reshared across social media as an example of why you should never judge someone based on appearance. Jake, who had made the cruel joke about orange chicken, stepped forward with tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I said. That was wrong, and I knew it was wrong when I said it. You're incredible." Maya looked around the circle of faces that had transformed from mockery to respect, from dismissal to admiration. Her final words rang through that dojo like a bell, clear and true and powerful. "I didn't come here to prove I could fight. I didn't come here for revenge or to embarrass anyone. I came here because martial arts chose me long ago when I was 8 years old, and I've been faithful to that calling every single day of my life. I came here because this is where I belong, and deep down, I think all of you knew that too." 3 months later, the transformation of Dragon's Path Dojo was complete and remarkable. Maya was leading the evening kata practice, her movements flowing like water in a mountain stream, demonstrating the ancient forms with a precision and beauty that had become the stuff of local legend. Students from other dojos across the city would come just to watch her teach, to witness the techniques that had created the most talked-about knockout in Austin martial arts history. Marcus and the other students followed her movements with genuine respect and gratitude, finally understanding what they had almost lost through their ignorance and prejudice. The dojo's culture had changed completely. It was now a place of respect, learning, and growth rather than mockery and exclusion. The woman they had tried to send back to the kitchen had become their sensei, their teacher, their guide to understanding what martial arts truly meant. And every single one of them was grateful for the lesson she had taught them about judging people by their heart and dedication instead of their appearance. Maya had found her home at last, and the martial arts world was infinitely better for it. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe, and share to others so they can learn too. See you in our next video.